Thank you for listening to A Glimpse of the Kingdom. I'm David Pendergrass. I received an email a while back, and I'm just now getting a chance to respond to it from a person from Australia. I think this might be my farthest email correspondence I've had so far, so that's really cool. He says this: Dear Dr. Pendergrass, I recently listened to your podcast on Revelation and found your interpretation of the biblical text quite eye-opening. From what you say, I understand there are still certain end-time events that have to take place. For example, the, quote, non-battle against the forces of the Antichrist and attacking Jerusalem. My question is this the Jerusalem we know? That is, will there be an end-time attack against the state of Israel, one that the Messiah would nip in the bud before it even starts? This boils down to the question I really would like to ask: does Israel still play a role in God's end-time plan? In a New Testament dispensation, is God finished with the state of Israel? I'm sure you're aware of the scriptures used to show that Israel is still very much part of God's plans. What is your point of view when it comes to Israel still being God's chosen people? Well, I think it's pronounced Joan. I'm sorry if I'm probably butchering your name. I'm sorry. That's a great question. And I'm going to say something that might make you frustrated. I don't know. You're right. I am familiar with the verses that people use. I can tell you what I think about it, though, okay? In Revelation, now let me say this first. I noticed you said the word New Testament dispensation. Like I said in my study on Revelation, these are all podcasts you can listen to. I did a 6-week study on that. I am not a dispensationalist. Dispensationalism is a particular way of reading the Bible so that it breaks up the Bible into different eras or epochs or dispensations. So I'm not a dispensationalist. I do not find dispensationalism compelling. They might be right. People who read it that way might be right. I just don't find it compelling. And the number one reason I don't find it compelling is because the Bible verses they use to argue that we do have 7 different dispensations are ripped out of context. And I value historical and literary context very, very, very much. So I can quote anything out of the Bible I want, but if I've ripped it out of the context in which it was originally written and misunderstand it, then I don't find it compelling. That's what dispensationalism does, in my view. For example, you can go online and say most dispensationalists argue a lot, of course, that Israel is to still be used. But they'll quote like Jeremiah 37 and Isaiah 43:6, and they'll go quote from, they'll quote from Deuteronomy, Isaiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel is a popular one. Zechariah is another popular one. But these are Old Testament texts, typically not talking at all about the end times. They're talking about the restoration of Israel after the Babylonian exile. When you get to the New Testament, Israel in the end times is barely mentioned, barely at all. So if you pick a bunch of Bible verses, rip it out of context, and make them form some dotted lines and connect all the dots, well, you can do that. I just don't find that convincing at all. When it comes to the New Testament, what seems to me amazingly clear, and to save time, I won't look up every verse, and I apologize if that frustrates you. What seems amazingly clear to me is that they did not believe that Israel as a Jewish nation was going to keep on going and be God's anointed in some particular way. They did not believe that. Paul adamantly argues repeatedly that Jesus the Messiah fulfills the promises promised to Abraham. I mean, read Romans 4. We are the seed, the Gentile nation and Jewish nations who follow Jesus are now Abraham's seeds. So in that sense, we have, you might want to say surpassed, but Jesus is the fulfillment of those promises. So whoever follows Jesus, now we are fulfilled. We are fulfillment of the promises to Israel. And the land that we're promised is the land now that they put in a spiritual sense. We get the citizenship of the kingdom of God. So what seems overwhelmingly clear to me is that Israel as a unique people group is still true, but as people who have a special role in the salvation of the people of the world is not true. Salvation is only found in Jesus. So then the question is, well, David, will they be used in the end times? To that response, I'll say what I said in the beginning. I'm not sure. What I do think is sure is that the Bible doesn't tell us they will be. And those are different answers. Just because the Bible doesn't say Just because the Bible is silent on an issue doesn't mean something will not occur. All I'm saying is I don't know of any Bible verse that compels me at all to think that Israel will be used. In fact, in the book of Revelation, Israel is only used twice, and in both instances, it seems to me, because it is apocalyptic literature, it's referring to typically Jewish Christians. Or the history of the ancestors who were given the covenantal promises, which now are fulfilled in the church because of Jesus. I also don't find it compelling because of ethnic reasons. At least right now, if Jesus were to come back and say, all right, I want to gather together the nation of Israel, there are very few, statistically speaking, purebred Jews around the world. They have intermarried. They have miscegenated, throughout history. Then the question is, do we need to get all the purebloods? Would God make sure all the pureblood genetic Jews go back to Israel and then form the state and then go from there? Well, then maybe. But in the first century, that wasn't even the case. In the first century, there were Jews in Babylon, all over Babylon, and all over Egypt, all over Rome, and of course in Jerusalem and Palestine itself. They were spread everywhere. And that's how it stayed. Even when the temple fell in AD 70, Judaism didn't cease to exist. It's just always been spread. I think it always will be spread. I don't think there'll be a time when all Jews go back to Israel. All Jews to this day, I'm just saying it one more time, they don't all want to go back. They like living in Persia. They like living in the U.S. They like living in Canada or Mexico or wherever. And I just don't think there's going to be a time where that happens. I don't think there's any Bible verse that lets me know that or would make me think that. I don't think there's any logistical reason. I don't think there's any genetic reason to think that when he comes back, we've got to find purebred Jews comprising a people called the State of Israel. So I don't think so. I don't think Israel has a special place before something has to happen. I know there are arguments for it. And if you want to read arguments for it, then of course, read your books, read your dispensationalism, go on Google and do a search for it and see if their arguments are compelling to you. It just seems to me that's not what's going on. But what about, David, those references that talk about the war and the Antichrist and so forth? Well, remember, if you'll listen to my study in Revelation, there is no Antichrist in Revelation. Antichrist comes from 1 and 2 John. There is an end-time figure, a king figure who rules and who fights off God's people, as it were, but it's set in such a cosmic scale. There is no location given, there's no time given, there's no battle. They just get all together and they get killed. And Armageddon is the mountain of Megiddo. There is no mountain at Megiddo. Megiddo is a valley. This is cosmic warfare talk that, to me, does not at all answer the question of when and where on earth is this going to happen. I don't think that's the point of all of Revelation, those end time. I think it's about an end time cosmic battles. And I think it's trying to explain other realities than what the weather will be like when this day happens on a farm somewhere. So now I've just said a whole lot here. If you've not listened to my Revelation studies, you might think David's a heretic. He doesn't believe Jesus is coming back. He doesn't believe in the Bible. And none of those things are true. I'm not a heretic. I do believe in Jesus. I very much know for a fact Jesus is returning. I do very much believe in the authority of Scripture, so much so that I do my best to read it in its context, because God inspired authors to write for the particular genres and context, and I take that seriously. So if you want to know what I think about end times, though I don't explain it fully, but what I think about end times and Revelation, listen to my Revelation podcast. It'll help. So I'm not in a hurry to see Israel reconstituted. I don't think that has to happen before he'll come back, and I'm not worried about that. I'm much more concerned about what the church is going to do before he comes back. And don't forget, even the Son of Man does not know the hour. That's what Jesus said. Even he doesn't know when it's going to come back. So if anybody ever tells you that all we got to do is get Israel back together and all the Jews back to the land, and then we know what's going to happen, that person knows more than Jesus did during his earthly ministry. And anybody who thinks they know more than Jesus did in his earthly ministry makes me a little nervous. I'm not sure if I want to listen to them anymore. God bless you. Great question. See you next time. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to A Glimpse of the Kingdom. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you want more, go to davidpendergrass.com, davidpendergrass.com. If you look at the top, you'll see various tabs that have sermons I've preached, a link to all the podcasts I've done so far, a link to my consulting website. For more information about my consulting, see davidpendergrassconsulting.com. Also, you'll see information about the books I've written that are found on Amazon.com. So davidpendergrass.com, one-stop shop, all that you need. If you want to reach out to me, follow me on Twitter at Dr. D. Pendergrass, at Dr. D. Pendergrass, and send me a message. I'll see you online. I gotta run and tell about what the Lord has done for me.